Hi and welcome to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nuske, and today I have a very special guest who is the author of Do a Day. His name is Bryan Falchuk. Hi Bryan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Your book, Do a Day, How to Live a Better Life Every Day, is very, very interesting, and we'll spin back on that a little bit and talk in depth about that. But what I like to do on the show is actually give you the opportunity to essentially introduce your backstory, learn a little bit more about yourself, and I'm seeing some amazing write-ups here. It looks like you're just about to be included in upcoming TEDx talk. Is that right? That's exciting.
Yeah, March of 2018.
Right. What will you be talking about during that?
So I'm going to be talking about really the crux of what my book is about, and it's the heart of what I do when I coach people. It also is the basis of I write. I'm a weekly contributor for Inc. magazine, so it's behind a lot of the writing that I do for them as well. And it's essentially trying to help people find their true motivation, because that to me is how you unlock achievement, and that's not that's not about just physical things or relationship or job or what, it's really, to me, life is a very holistic thing. So this is about what I think is truly transformational. And the good news is, I've done it across the board in my life, and I've seen it with many other people. So it's been tested, and I'm excited to share that when I get on stage there and, in places like your show.
Yeah, look, TEDx is no small stage, is it?
Yeah, no, it's really funny when I started the whole journey of working with my own mentor and realizing, the next step really is writing a book, because I love the help that I'm giving to get people to unlock themselves and really change their lives. And I just said to him, I was like, if I did this 24/7 full-time coaching, no sleeping, no eating, I still wouldn't be doing enough of it.
Yeah.
And so, he challenged me. He's like, how do you leverage that? How do you get more scale in getting your message out? And it hit me to write a book. And he's like, what does success look like with that? And he's like, do a vision board. And the one image I had, I didn't do 50 different things. It was just, I took an image of a TED Talk and I superimposed myself from another talk I had given on top of the poor guy who was in the original image who had, blocked out. So it's, it's coming true, which is pretty cool.
Isn't that amazing how you can, create that vision board and, what you think about comes about essentially?
Yeah. And I've never been that way. I'm not one who would ever say, I wouldn't have judged it, but I wouldn't have been like, do a vision board and then everything will happen. And of course I didn't just do the vision board and then it happened. I set my intention. It was all tied to my direction. And, there's a lot of action behind that, but that action paid off. And of course, if I didn't do those things, then I'd have nothing. Yeah,
the small steps to a larger journey somewhat.
Yeah, exactly.
So with passion and motivation, do you see that they're synergies, they're related to each other, or can you be doing personal development exclusively of one of those two things?
So to me, I think motivation needs to be there no matter what. I think that is the thing, that true motivation, and I talk about that a lot in the book and in the articles that I write. I had gotten a Twitter debate with this guy who's a famous trainer for the U.S. Marine Corps, and he was saying motivation's fickle, it doesn't last, it's actually discipline, that's what you need. And I understand from a military perspective why he would say that, but I would disagree. I think true motivation is not fickle. Motivation's around, if you're losing weight for beach season or a high school reunion or something like that, sure. When that event is gone, then so is your reason for losing weight. But that to me is not real motivation. That's a specific event that you wanted something to happen for. Real motivation is the thing that is the deepest within you, the most important thing that no matter what you will always care about. That doesn't change. That doesn't, come and go with the weather. That is the thing you dig deep and grab when you're at your toughest moments. So I think that's got to be there.
So
and then if you talk about
so this is not like the New Year's resolution,
No.
massive rush to the gym, and then in January, February,
and then they're gone.
Yeah, and then they're gone. This is much different.
Well, look at it. There's no motivation in a New Year's resolution. Go to the gym more, or go to the gym that's not a motivation. That's just a thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
So what's keeping you going to the gym? And what does going to the gym even mean? If you walk in and walk out, you've gone to the gym. Does that count? But one thing that I found in all this that I've done with the book and the coaching work is I still have a day job, and it's fantastic, but it's not in line with what I'm doing with the book. And there are aspects of it that overlap. I'm a senior leader in a successful company, and that's great. And that leadership and the mentoring that I have to do in that capacity aligns. But the reality is, my passion is in what we're talking about right now.
Yep.
And that ties to my motivation. And I think if you'd asked about having the two things, I think ultimately in a perfect world you have both and they're aligned. And what can be difficult is when you're aware of what you're passionate about and what your true purpose is, and you're not living in congruence with that. That gets challenging. Yeah. And I'm lucky that at least my day job is something I genuinely enjoy. I love the company. I have an unbelievably talented team that impresses me every day. So it's not, it could certainly be worse. But yeah. I'm also at the same time aware that, I'm doing great things for them in their context, but my purpose feels different now.
Well, there seems to be like a tangential point coming your way.
Yeah, and perhaps a reckoning, and that's okay.
I want to ask you a few different questions, if I might, and I'll swing back to mentors in your past later. But I'm really interested in your backstory, where it all began for you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about Bryan with us?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up, as a lot of people do, the child of a divorcing family or divorced family. I was the youngest of four. I was the marriage saver. Didn't work. And, as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, when things started to break apart, very young children have one basic need, and that's to feel safe and taken care of. Because, of course, they can't provide that for themselves.
True.
And that wasn't happening for me. The basis for that feeling was coming apart. And, of course, at that age, you don't understand. You don't understand what you're feeling. You don't know what to do about it. You don't know how to talk about it. You just feel unsettled inside. And so I couldn't turn to my parents because there were 4 of us, and so their attentions were spread out, and they had the divorce going on. So they were taken up with their business, and that's okay. But I needed to turn somewhere, and I turned to something that was always comforting, never judgmental, wasn't yelling, wasn't screaming, wasn't moving out, and that's food. And if you look at a picture of me from, say, age 4.5 or 5, and one from 6 or 6.5, there's nothing slow and steady about it. It was dramatic. I went from being this skinny, smiley little kid to clearly not having that smiley look on my face and being, at that point, fat, and pretty soon seriously obese. And I spent most of my childhood in this state of obesity. I stopped weighing myself just shy of 250 pounds. I probably got up to 270-ish. I don't know exactly. I should be about 180. So I was roughly 100 pounds overweight. And that was my first taste of the crushing gravity of all the things that lie ahead to achieve what you need to achieve. The idea of losing 100 pounds is unbelievably daunting. And if you bust yourself in the gym and you eat really well and you lose 3 or 4 pounds, fantastic. You still have 96 or 97 more pounds to go. And you just look at the totality of that and, oh my God, I'm just so burnt out from this week. How am I supposed to keep this up for another year? Do the math. It's going to be at least a year. And that's really difficult. So I would stop and, get no further than a couple of days. And I kept trying to use willpower and discipline, and it just was not powerful enough to overcome the anxiety around all of that future, how am I ever going to do this?
And then the work, the actual work.
Yeah. And how do I keep it off? And the reality is I didn't gain weight because I ate too much and moved too little. I gained weight because I was depressed and riddled with anxiety because of what I was feeling and not dealing with. The weight gain was just a symptom, as would be many other things down the road for me. So I lost weight in high school with the help of a really amazing guy who worked at my school who ran our physical education program. And that's great. But what he wasn't able to do while he introduced me to physical fitness and a different relationship with my health and more positivity, because I wasn't even in touch with it, he certainly wouldn't have known how to deal with the underlying emotional issues.
Yeah.
So, I lost weight around age 17. I went to college, and my weight loss had been to not be seen as the fat kid anymore. When I went to college, nobody knew me. So no one ever knew me as the fat kid. And so that motivation, remember I said it's not about beach season or looking good for others. The motivation was gone. So I did okay through most of college with my weight. But then afterward, in my early 20s, my life started to come together professionally, and I just sort of got in this mindless routine with a job that was okay. I wasn't really into it, but it was fine. I was just sort of living a life of mindlessness, and then slowly but surely the weight did come back on, and I never looked obese again. I always say I looked American. I just looked like everybody else, and we're all a bit overweight.
Heavy set.
Yeah, well, I don't think no one ever called me fat again. I don't think anyone would have looked at me and said that. If you compare a side-by-side photo now, you're like, how did we not see it?
Yeah.
But I guess it's like your hair growing. You don't notice, and the next thing you know, you need a haircut. Well, it's like you gain a couple pounds a year, no one really notices. So that was the first part of my backstory. But then there was this really pivotal moment when everything changed, and that's what led to the book. And that was in 2011. I was 32 years old. My wife and I had been married for about 3 years. Our son was a little over 3 years. Our son was about 2.5. And we've been married for 5 years, because if she hears this, she'll be like, we didn't get married in 2000.
And they will correct you.
And she should do. Yeah,
yes.
That would be appropriate. Yeah, that was wrong of me. My son was about 2.5. It was June 30th, 2011. She had been in the throes of a chronic illness that we weren't aware of, that had reared its head and didn't go away. And it was getting close to taking her life at this point. So before I go further with the story, I will just say she is still alive to this day. I often get caught up in the story and forget to mention that. And then, people are sitting there holding back tears trying to figure out what's happened. So she is still alive.
Thank you.
But she was losing 2 pounds a day. No doctor could explain it. They were all blaming her. Are you just depressed? You're doing this to yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. Stop it. I took a leave from work. I was able to work from home, actually. So that helped, because we had a little kid and he couldn't take care of himself. And it brought me right back to my feelings as a little kid. But this moment in June 30th, her doctor was going on vacation for 6 weeks, and he called me to check in, and he just said, I'm going away for 6 weeks. Let's check in when I'm back. And I said, she's just over 100 pounds. She literally can't get herself out of bed. She can't keep food down. She's losing 2 pounds a day. Do the math. She won't be here in 6 weeks. And all he had to say was, okay, we'll take her to the emergency room if you need to.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got off the phone, and she, walked into our bedroom, and my son was there looking at her, and she was just in bed, and it just hit me. I was like, what is going on? And what is my role in all this? And this, I'm depressed. I'm facing something that, maybe if I was 90 years old, I wouldn't be surprised with the prospect of losing my wife, but certainly not at 32 as we're starting our life together.
Yeah.
And this poor little boy is losing his mother and losing his father just at a slower rate. I was not the father he needed, and I was about to be the only one he was going to have, or that's what we all thought. And that the gravity of that situation, the importance of my responsibility to him, and quite frankly, under the surface of all of it, the responsibility to myself, because I was not living my life. I was miserable. And I can blame everyone else for it, but the reality is, ultimately, it's all on me. I had the power to make different choices.
You were just existing, essentially.
Yeah, I wrote an article recently where it hit me like a ton of bricks. The way I would phrase it is, are you living your life or are you an employee of your life? I was working in my life. I did the tasks, but I wasn't living at all. I always say my wife and son were the family, and I was that guy who worked there. And that's not on them. That's on me.
No, of course.
So that, that all hit me. And of course, a lot of it was around the feelings around my son and what he deserves to have. And yeah, taking me back to my childhood, but that was such a powerful moment and feeling for me. I woke up the next day materially changed forever.
Yeah.
Because I finally had what was missing, and that was this true purpose of what I want more than anything all around. And I wasn't living in accordance with that. And so everything changed from that moment. And I had three things that were really difficult for me in my life that I knew were holding me back. And one was, where my health had gone, was this job situation where, I had the flexibility to work from home, but actually it was quite a poisonous environment. And I don't care what you say about leaving work at work. It doesn't happen. You bring it home.
Of course.
So, I knew that would be a long haul to fix that, but that was something I was going to have to address. And I can't just say, oh, I need a paycheck, so I got to deal with it. And then the last thing was I was aware of the stuff from my childhood now. And I always had every excuse in the book of why I couldn't deal with it. And especially with my wife's illness is, we've got all these medical bills. I can't add to that with therapy bills. Or, how am I going to go leave for an hour and a half to go talk to someone when, you're stuck in bed and someone's got to take care of you and take care of our son? You can find a solution for all of it. And the reality is, as impossible as it seemed to make any of that work, just because it was impossible doesn't mean I didn't have to do it. I still had to find a way to make it work, or else it would come crashing down. And that, that again, going back to that purpose, I knew that continuing to allow these things to just fester was going to be the end of me. And if my purpose for not doing it was so I could take care of everyone else, how much care could I give them if I broke?
Yeah.
So those were three things that I immediately hit, and I set very specific goals with them. The first was on my weight, and I exercised materially different. I had just sort of gotten on the elliptical, and next thing I know, it's beeping because it's over, and I barely broke a sweat. Whereas starting that July 1st, I put on an interval program, and I was exhausted at the end, but I felt great. And I did that every day, and I charted my weight, and I set a specific goal. And it was to lose 40 pounds, just about 40 pounds by the end of the year. This is July 1st, by December 31st. And I beat it. I lost 42 pounds by my birthday in October. And that was great. And I've stayed that weight. Actually, I've gotten a little bit lighter, but essentially stayed that weight for the past 6.5 years.
Wow.
It's the first time ever and it's just not an issue. I don't have any problem managing my weight, whereas I always say I spent the first half of my life obese and the second half trying not to be. That's not the case anymore. I'm not trying not to be obese. I'm just a healthy person.
Yeah. So it's a complete shift in mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm not working at it anymore. I'm just living it.
It's just what you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
really nice, really freeing.
Look, I'm a father of two young boys, and that story about your childhood. I have some similarities which we won't go into today, but I really feel you, and I appreciate personally that you share that with our audience, and it started to make me think. My choice of leaving the corporate world on high six figures out of the oil and gas industry so I could grow up around my children was the right one. So thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
Well, what you did with your choices and sharing that out, and that shows people actually you can do it. It may be hard work. I'm sure there were scary moments. And that's okay. Yeah. If you believe in yourself and you have the ability and you believe you have the ability, it will work.
I found that the initial decision was based, the initial shock and worry, if you like, was based around walking away from the six figures, and it turned out to be easier than what I had anticipated. And this is the thing, we get so locked up inside our head about, what's going to happen tomorrow. That's just a construct of your mind. Tomorrow doesn't exist. You've got what you've got in front of you now. Deal with what you're looking at now, and everything will work out, I believe.
Yeah.
So, look, thank you so much for that. I wanted to swing back a little bit about your previous mentors and who you looked up to before we start digging into your book. Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course.
So who do you have? Do you have the likes of Jim Rohn? Who did you follow, and who are you following?
So they're obviously really impressive and inspiring people out there. The people who I would cling to actually are people much closer to me and that I've gotten to know on a very personal level. So the first one, I talk about him in the book, but it's this guy from high school who introduced me to wellness in a totally different way. And there's a number of reasons why he's so important to me. One of them is it was the first time in my life where physical activity didn't come with all of this judgment of you're fat and lazy and incapable. It was, and that's why I had avoided it. I did PE to get out of sports, which is why I think a lot of people do PE growing up. But he's not interested in that. He said, you may have come to me because you're trying to avoid something and you think this is a cop-out. How beautiful is it if I get you to love the thing that you just tried to avoid by just introducing it to you differently? So there was no judgment. There was no go sprint, back and forth or run laps because I say so. It was, let's talk about what you enjoy. Let's talk about what you're trying to achieve physically. Let me introduce you to a whole variety of different things you can do to get there that aren't painful. When you're really overweight, running hurts a lot. So what else can we do? Let me introduce you to lifting weights. High school boy, very interested in lifting weights. We all want to be muscle bound and we want girls to like us and all that. So he just took a totally different approach. And it wasn't this judgment of the fat kid. It was let me bring you on a journey and why don't you decide what you enjoy? And that was really changing for me, and I've used that approach in so much of my own coaching work. The other piece of him that was really just, for me, such a beautiful thing is he doesn't use negative phrases. So if something's bad, he'll say it's not good. And well, technically not is a negative word. He didn't even bring the really negative word into the conversation.
I understand, yep.
And it's such a minor thing, but actually that word choice really matters. It's how we frame things.
Yep.
It's people who say, I don't disagree with you. You could also say, I agree with you. It means the same thing.
Yeah. Just has a different light on it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose you could be saying, well, I'm in between. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm not necessarily agreeing. Okay, well, that's a different thing. But if you agree with them, just say I agree. So that was a really, that was a beautiful just introduction to a different way of framing things, and I felt it myself when he would use that wording with me. It's like find a way to celebrate what is instead of constantly talking it down.
I was yesterday I was talking with a professor and on the show, and he talked about this empowering people rather than enforcing your will upon them. As a mechanism of control, because that's essentially we're in a control system. These were his comments, and it sort of resonated with me with what you've just said in terms of if you're given the ability to choose what you enjoy rather than, like you say, go and run laps, it's a totally different experience for you.
Yeah, it is, and of course. That's the thing that endures. If someone's making you do something or micromanaging or stepping in, what happens when they're gone? You're not. I had a friend growing up who got straight A's in all of his homework and failed all of his tests. And it's because his mother stood over his shoulder, almost like ruler in hand, whack his wrist if he got the wrong answer and to tell him how to get it right. So when it came time to take an exam, he wasn't capable of doing that.
Yeah. I just, this whole giving ownership to the individual, to the human that you're in front of, or yourself, is, allow yourself to do something you enjoy rather than doing things that you loathe. It's I'm looking at some of these other lists of things here. You've been involved on other shows such as Motivational Mondays, Join Up Dots, Misfits Entrepreneurs, Unstoppable Coach. So it seems to me that you're doing a lot of speaking about this topic. And how long has your book actually been out now?
So it's been out since March of 2017, and I started doing interviews probably a month or two after that, probably 2 months after that. I think this is like number 65 or something. I've done a lot.
There was certainly an impressive list there. You'd be very good at it by this stage, I suspect.
Yeah, I better be, yeah.
I just want to dig deeper into the book. In actual fact, might I say, I love your website. I love how you have your video playing there as you're walking along. It really caught my attention, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Bryan, I just wonder if we can touch a little bit on the main core concepts that you've outlaid inside the book.
Yeah, for sure. We've been sort of dancing around them or speaking to some of the key points already, which is great. So Do a Day itself, there's a couple of foundational points that underlie it, and I want to come back to those, but let me speak to what Do a Day itself is. So it's a philosophical approach, if you want to call it that, on how you go about your day in support of your goals. And your goals can be something you want to just achieve, something positive, like, I've run a marathon, that was a goal, or something you want to overcome, losing weight or, relationship issue or illness or whatever. But either way, something you want to get to in your life, a new place you want to be. And it's never just one. We might point to one thing as the main thing. I say someone will come to me for coaching around this, around their career or their health or wealth or whatever. The reality is life is holistic. There's many other things at play, and you can't expect to change one thing and have your life be fine. You've got to look at the whole picture. So Do a Day is holistically, when you wake up that morning, how are you going to live your life? What actions will you take? It's that word do, right? It's a verb.
Yep.
What are you going to do in support of your goals? Now, you had talked about, that anxiety or the weight of tomorrow. And you don't know if those things are going to happen. Those are potentialities, not eventualities. And actually, it's never tomorrow. It's always just today. So we can never be stuck today making choices and taking actions or not taking actions because of something that may or may not happen tomorrow. So Do a Day is it's just today. We can move apart from yesterday and tomorrow. The yesterday is, you made a bad choice. I share a story in the book around a pretty serious mistake I made at work. I think it was a fireable mistake. It wasn't, but I certainly felt like that at the time. I made a huge error in this very large, I built an operating model for an insurance company for one of their core functions. I missed, there's a skip in the data. So I didn't copy all of the data and put it into my model to calculate their volume and how many people they'd need. I missed like 20% of the data. And the reality is the guy who gave me the data at the client is the one who screwed up the data feed. But it's not his fault that I missed it. That's on, he may have put the pieces in place, but I didn't check my work. I didn't ensure that I had everything. So that's on me.
Yep.
But I made the recommendations and put this whole plan together and all that on the wrong data, down to the individual people who was going to have to move where. There was relocation involved. There was early retirement involved. There were retention bonuses. I mean, it was
full on.
It was tens of millions of dollars at play. And it was wrong by, I don't remember how much, maybe $8 million. I mean, it was real money. And not just real money, people.
Lives.
Those are people who were about to be told, this office is closing. You're not needed anymore. We have this package for you, or this office is closing. You're incredibly valuable to us. Would you be willing to take a job at this new office an hour away? Or would you be willing to move to this new state and here's a package? This is very real stuff to human beings. Luckily, I caught it before any of those letters went out, any of those conversations were had. But the presentation had been given to the customer, to the client. They had made, they had made their financial calculations off of that. So this is a pretty big deal. And I owned up to it. which is great. I fixed the maths and gave them the new answers and the new, down to the individual people and all that.
With your heart in your mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I had such egg on my. It was like an ostrich egg size. Like it was
big,
and it was really big. And I was up for a promotion, and so I was like, well, that's out. That's clearly not going to happen. Forget about that. I'm going to get fired. There is no question I'm going to get fired. And a week or so went by, and I didn't hear anything. I was working on a different project, and I started to have problems with my manager on that project. And it was, Bryan's really difficult. He's very argumentative, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Not everyone in the project felt that way with about me, but a couple people did, and my manager did, and that mattered.
Yeah.
And that went on through the end of the project. There's about a month left. I never heard anything about the problem again, the error again. And then I had my my annual appraisal, or my performance review. Mm-hmm. And so I was I went into it really scared because that mistake. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to get no raise, no bonus, and you're out of here.
Yep.
And there was not a single word in that entire review about the mistake.
Wow.
Not a single word. There was about 90% of it was about what the hell is wrong with you. You have been unbelievably impossible for the past month. No one understands why. You were a shooting star before, and now you're difficult. People don't want to work with you. You're argumentative. You're defensive. You're jumping on people for nothing. And all of that was because of how I was overcome with anxiety and regret and embarrassment and suspicious that someone's going to come and fire me any minute now. So watch out.
You turned inwards.
And so yeah.
Wow.
And anyone who said anything that, probably was innocent, but if there's the slightest chance I could take it as an attack, I did. And so I attacked back. So isn't it ironic that I'm beating myself up over yesterday, over that mistake. And it's that which I'm doing, which is ruining today. The mistake itself, the thing that I'm living in all this regret and negativity around, doesn't matter.
It's done.
It's over.
It's done.
I handled it really well. I didn't handle the aftermath. Like about a week later, the world moved on. No one cared.
Yeah.
They got over it, but I didn't. And so I ended up destroying today. And I left the company after that, which is fine. I had another job offer. It wasn't all negative. But if I didn't, I really couldn't have stayed. I destroyed my opportunity at that company because of my behavior over the course of 1 month from a yesterday that was actually irrelevant to everyone else in the world. Until I made it relevant.
That's really powerful. I mean, it's so easy to, kick yourself so hard and feel so embarrassed. And, it's one thing to own the problem, but it's another thing to let it go in all, in genuinely let something go rather than worrying about it into the future. Because obviously it affected you. And I recall similar situations, frankly.
We all have them, don't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's not just work, it's personal relationships. It's parenting. You yelled at your kid and then you're like, oh, I'm a terrible parent. Mm-hmm. You're a terrible parent? Really?
There's strong words.
There's very strong words. And then if you frame yourself that way, how are you going to behave as a parent? Mm. And what's going to happen the next time you get in that situation? You're going to pull all the anxiety and the judgment from the last time you did it. Look, just because you made a mistake, just because you did the wrong thing, and wrong is subjective in a lot of cases, but just because you did something you wish you hadn't done, it does not mean you ever need to do it again. Mm-hmm. That ultimately is a choice. And sometimes the word choice, people take offense to it. Like, I didn't choose to be in the financial situation I'm in. I didn't choose for them to be mad at me. I hear all of that. Mm. Whether it's conscious or not, you are choosing how you react to all of it.
Yep.
It may not always feel that way, but ultimately you can choose that. You can choose to punch back or not.
Yep.
So it's that point where we make a choice where you can do differently today, regardless of yesterday, or, like I said, you still have 97 pounds to lose, or whatever, all the future that's still in front of you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter because none of it's happening right now.
Yep, yep. I often,
And that's extremely freeing.
absolutely, I often hear, it's not the problem, it's how you respond.
Yeah, completely.
I I could just talk with you for hours. I really could. There's a lot of rich content going on in this call, and I know our audience is very receptive to, mindset and personal development, living in the now. So I would just say, a big thank you for coming on the show today. And I'd love if you could share with everybody where they might be able to find you.
Yeah, of course. So there's you mentioned before the website for Do a Day. It's doadaybook.com. I've tried to put everything there so you can find the book there. It's for sale pretty much everywhere in every format, Kindle, Nook, print, Audible, whatever. But I link all that out from doadaybook.com, as well as I'm quite active on social media. I always say I need to hire like a 19-year-old to do it for me. I'm too old, but I link to my accounts there. My main one is my Twitter account is Newbody, Newbodi. And of course, you can find me at Inc. Magazine, which I link to that also at doadaybook.com. Or if you're in New Jersey in early March, come by the TEDX in Bergen County, and I'll be presenting there. And I've got a couple more that I'm a finalist for, so there may be some others to share.
Yeah.
And I'm working on my second book, so hopefully sometime in 2018 I'll be able to share that, and maybe we can talk about that when it comes out.
That would be an absolute pleasure for myself and the My Future Business audience. I will be doing a write-up for anyone who's listening to this. Look below and you'll find some links to Bryan's work, his book, and any other thing that you will need to make contact with Bryan. Bryan, thank you again for coming on the My Future Business show, and we will speak with you again soon.
My pleasure, Rick. Thank you.